Hey everybody, Stu Smith and Jeff Nichols here with another Tactical Fitness Report. And today we are going to talk about the summer heat and your training. And I don't know about you, Jeff, but I have been seeing some hot and humid days here in Maryland. And I know around the country it's hot and arid, depending on where you live. It's hot and unseasonably hot in some areas of the country. And top it off, it's wildfires are adding to the pollution and making the air quality bad and making it just very difficult for people to train. So what we're going to do today, and we're going to just kind of kick this back and forth and just come up with some of the solutions that we have seen that work for us in these situations.
Yep. Yeah, there's a few things, and these are like in no particular order, I guess. Really, it's just there are some things that are very common, seasonally, and then also we got on this topic of like, when Stu and I were prepping years ago, it's kind of nice to kind of see these generational changes of things that, like we're saying, like not that air quality hasn't always been an issue in some areas of the country, like over our duration of life and training, but it's becoming more of an issue for certain places. And so it's like 30 years ago, we wouldn't necessarily be talking about air quality issues in certain cities, and now we are. So that's kind of where this came from, is there are some changes happening generation from generation, and you're seeing that impact, whether it's the coronavirus or fires or whatever you want to call it, right? There's just impacts. And so we're just talking about them a little bit.
Yeah, well, one thing for sure is running in the heat of the day in the middle of the summer is obviously not your first choice, right? I mean, if you can go earlier in the morning when it's cooler, I mean, I'll tell you right now, we just ran this morning. It was 73 degrees, which is as cool as it's going to be at 6 a.m., but it was over 85% humidity, and we still were borderline overheating, drenching out, like wringing out the sweat of our shirts. And, and when you do that, when you have that kind of water loss, you're losing a lot of electrolytes, which for those of you who are curious what mostly you sweat is sodium, but you also have potassium, magnesium that are part of that electrolyte balance. You got to replace that. Otherwise, you're going to feel like crap the rest of the day. You may even start cramping, if it gets, more severe. And it's a constant battle, all through the week of replacing this water. And I've been on it all week, and in fact, on Thursday, I do my mobility day and I go indoors. It's an air conditioned workout, and I do my best not to break a sweat in this mobility day. But the only thing I do on that makes me break a sweat is stretching, because it hurts sometimes, right?
Yep.
It's like I break a sweat because I'm like, oh God, this sucks.
Yep.
So anyway, that's just some of the things I do. I started earlier, even though it's hot and humid. It's not as hot and humid as it is at noon, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that this is always a question, because here's the reality is we don't have control of the weather. Like, so that, first of all, accept that. Secondly, it's also understand that like most people work throughout the day. So like that really typically most people cover, that's like the heat of the day. So you're really kind of, in my opinion, you're left with morning and evenings. An ability to do either one of those efficiently, run, train, whatever you can do in the morning, evening, comes down to one of two things, really. How, what's your state of hydration and fuel, and what was your sleep like? So if your sleep is good, now we're right back to where Stu's at. It's like, it's interesting how, we can, it's super unsexy to talk about how important hydration is. So it's super unsexy, but it is the truth. Like, we can keep going back and say, hey, take all these supplements, do all these things. But we know that if you're underslept, well, that is your pure limitation. Doesn't matter how good your training is if you're underslept. Doesn't matter how good your training is, or how good your sleep is, if you're dehydrated. So, and I'm only saying this just to kind of bring this thing around. It's like, heat is only an issue if you don't prepare for it, right? And so, and then someone will say, well, yeah, Jeff, but when you're at selection, you're going to be doing stuff in the middle of the day. Yes. Yeah. And that is part of the selection. And so what we're saying is like, okay, the best way to develop mental toughness is do all the little things when no one's watching consistently, really. And this falls into it. It's like, we all know it's hot in the middle of the day. So let's remove that from our training possibility, unless you have to. So this is part of mental toughness. Like, oh, my favorite time to train is the middle of the day. Well, now I have to get up and do it. Well, there's your lesson in mental toughness right there as well. So it's like, this is twofold. It's always going to be hot. So prepare for it. And by always preparing for it, well, that's really unsexy. Preparing every day by hydrating and stuff. It's like, you want high performance, hydrate.
Well, here's the problem is if you don't do that, yeah, your performance will drop if you're lucky, right? Because it keeps on getting worse from there. I mean, you become a heat casualty. Now you're talking about cramping and you can't move. And
you become predisposed to it more often.
Yeah, body temperature elevating to where it becomes dangerous, and they got to put you in an ice tub, or they got to send you to the hospital to get, cold, intravenous fluids.
Yeah, they'll put you in cold blankets, right? They'll wrap you in cold blankets, and they'll cool the IVs. Yeah. Right. I've been in that position where it's like you stop sweating in Arizona in August. Yeah. Right. It's like, okay. And so how is it that we best prevent heat casualty? Hydration. That's it. And so let me say this again, so we're all on the same page. What I mean by hydration is not just during activity. Okay. It's hot outside. We know it. So wouldn't it be a really good idea to drink water before, knowing we're going to lose it? I'm saying Stu's like, well, that's what I do. We're saying this just so we're not saying, hey, let's get ahead of it. Because here's the best piece of advice I ever got when it came to hydration. And it actually came from a SEAL officer in my BUDS class, believe it or not. And he goes, the world's best canteen is your stomach. And I was like, damn, that's, to me, it was super insightful. He's like, can't be hydrated if it's not in your stomach. It doesn't do any good in your canteen. And I was like, good point.
Yeah. And, you have to get used to running with somewhat of a full stomach. I mean, it's not fun and it hurts.
That sloshing sucks.
And you can catch a little cramping in there, but it's easy to recover from that kind of cramping versus the loss of electrolyte and loss of fluid cramping. Two different cramps.
Yeah, there's a big difference, guys, between, like, think about the economy even. Again, it just makes more sense. You can be in a debt, but if you're in debt too long, you end up in a deficit. So being in a little bit of a water debt, not an issue. But if we get into a deficit of water, there's the only comeback from that is complete sedentary, cool environment, dry environment, rehydrate, nothing else. And oftentimes in a training environment, we don't have that. So we need to hydrate prior.
One of my guys this summer went out to SOAS, and good candidate, civilian. And so you guys that are going OCS, this is something to consider, because when you go out there and the air is dry, it's not as humid. Well, I guess that depends on the weather. If the winds are blowing from the ocean, it's going to be a little more humid. If it's blowing from the desert, it's going to be arid.
Yeah.
Just never really know what it's going to be. And so you may not realize that you're sweating because your sweat just evaporates right off of your skin. And so you don't have sweat stains. You don't have the ability to wring out your sweat. But you know what you will have? You'll have salt stains on your clothes. And when you're seeing salt stains, now the only problem is, most white shirts in first phase, you're not going to see the salt stains very well. Yeah. But just know, if you're not sweating, you're evaporating salt and water.
Yeah. And that sweat will collect around your belt too. Just keep that woven belt in BUDS with a white shirt on. That's where you're going to see it's going to collect in the backside and the waist in that woven belt.
Yep. And your pants.
And your boots. It'll soak through your boots too.
Yep.
I mean, that's really from the ocean, but just look for those indicators for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Because here's what happened. He was putting out, feeling pretty good, doing pretty well. A couple days into their testing, or however they do it there with SOAS, and he started getting overheated. And because he was a civilian, they couldn't treat him like they did the two other guys who were ROTC and Naval Academy guys, where they just gave them cold IVs. That all they could do is give him water and some Pedialyte, and it wasn't enough to help him, and he had to drop from the process of trying to go to Buds as an officer.
Yeah.
Kind of sucks. But that is a heat casualty that occurs due to not thoroughly understanding the water loss that is occurring throughout the day. So you just have to naturally assume you're losing water and constantly feed it. And like Jeff said, that was a great quote. You know, your best canteen is the stomach. Just keep it full of water, you know, and electrolytes. Yeah.
So Stu and I are saying hydration is an issue and depletion of those electrolytes are bad. All these sort of things. It's sort of like, oh, doom and gloom. So here's the solution, or here's a solution. The solution is this: we're proposing to you that we're kind of training for a worst case environment. The worst case scenario is hot. You're going to do a PST when it's super hot. Got it. Like worst case scenario. And you're going to train in the super hot environment. Worst case scenario. Got it. So the only really like consistent way through this whole hydration issue with heat issue is we have to practice this good process in heat. So that's the other side. It's like, okay, we know it's the summer, it's hot. We know you can't not train. There's no value in that. So we're saying, we know you're going to train. So if you're going to go train, you need to practice. We know it's hot. So make sure part of your training is not just the training, the running, the lifting. Your training begins with hydration, right? That's the beginning of your training, is get up in the morning and begin your state of hydration, improve it, right? That's what you're doing. Your breakfast is to break the fast, not just in food, but also there's a fast and hydration at night too, right? And so there you go. That's what we're saying is like, heat stroke and heat issues are only an issue if you don't begin working through the issue in training. Begin to work through the issue in training, because don't just train in this perfect little bubble and then you show up to SOAS or Buds or SFAS or Ranger School down in fucking Florida and Georgia, and then you're like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. So that's what we're saying. Yes, we do want you to get outside. We do want you to experience these deficits, and we want you to experience how to improve on these deficits and debts. It's through hydration and these things. So it's not just telling you that these things are a problem and then you encounter them and go, well, I should have fixed them. Yeah, that's what we're trying to say is get them ahead of time, hydrate ahead of time, eat ahead of time, know that it's going to be hot, accept it, right? And then just like what Stu is saying, maybe you plan a route that allows for you to get into water, gets into a shower, right? Hose yourself off, jump into a lake, get into a shade. Like we're here in Virginia Beach, the state parks along the coast, along the beach, they're real old parks and they're totally shaded. So even in the hot of the day, we heard there's 35 miles of like trails inside the park. Nice. And we just walk the park for an hour with a ruck on. It's shaded. It's brilliant. So find other places that are, not just an open track. Like that's what we say, go get an open high school track, go find some trails.
Yeah, absolutely. Acclimate yourself to this. And when you do that, you're going to start building these habits of hydration before, hydration during, sipping an electrolyte. I personally use, I wake up, first thing I do in the morning, especially in the summer, is I just drink about a quart of water.
Right here.
Yeah, I got it right here.
First thing.
Right there.
Exactly. I drink this before I do anything.
Yeah. Whole quart done in about less than a minute. It's in there. Like I said, it's my new canteen. And then start the workout, maybe eat some fruit or something. I usually don't eat a whole lot before the workout, just something to get me through. But I also have some in my car. I have extra fruit in my car. I have electrolytes in my car. I have these drip drop little powders that are really good, and also have Pedialyte powders that are really good. Put those in water bottles, especially if I'm starting to sweat profusely, which I do. because I weigh myself before and I weigh myself after, and there's usually a difference between 5 and 6 pounds every day, even with drinking all that extra water. So I know I'm losing about a gallon of water. That's about 8 pounds.
Yeah.
So, during these workouts, and it doesn't take long, an hour and a half outside, moving a lot, you're going to be sweating really a lot. And then you got to spend the rest of the day playing catch up.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to feel like crap the next day.
Yeah. You got to start doing the math here. Like, as your body, most human bodies, as healthy human body, is about 84 to 87% water. If Stu is losing, and he's about 200 pounds, if he's losing 4 to 6 pounds of water, right, per training session, right, he's upwards of 3 to 4% of body weight in total loss. 3% in like what, Stu? Like in 2 hours, 2.5 hours?
Yeah.
Right. And that's with replenishment. He's drinking water while he's losing it and still losing 1.5% of body weight. He's only able to replenish 2%. Like, that's a lot of weight, folks. And so you start saying, it's like, if you wake up, like you went to bed hydrated, let's play this out. You go to bed hydrated, more or less.
Yeah.
But through your sleep, you're going to lose 1% of your body weight through expiring moisture. So then now we're lost a pound, and now you don't replenish that pound, that quart. And then you go for a 3-mile run, you drop another 3% of body weight. Before you even really start your day off on really recovering and healing, you're down 4% body weight.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I can feel it too. If I'm feeling a little parched, after that workout and I'm walking around, even if it wasn't a leg day, I can feel calves starting to cramp. Not like they're cramping, but they're about to. Right.
Yeah.
If I were to flex it, it'd probably cramp on me.
You betcha.
Right? And it's just one of those things. It's one of my little indicators of like, all right, I need to get my electrolytes in. Because here's what happened the other day. We were doing this workout that had running and calisthenics. We're doing some bear crawls, and I noticed one of my guys, instead of bear crawling, he's on all fours, right? Like crawling on hands and knees like a baby, right? And he can't really straighten his legs, right? His hams are starting to cramp up to a point, and then his abs started cramping up. I'm like, all right, let's stop. Enough. I said, let me show you one of my emergency tricks that I do. And I had a can of chicken noodle soup in my car. And I said, just drink this can of chicken noodle soup right now. Right. And plus he drank a bottle of water and on top of it. But that can of chicken noodle soup is any can is loaded with sodium, and it's also loaded with potassium. It actually has the same potassium of about 3 bananas in a can of chicken noodle soup, and just Campbell's chicken noodle soup. And in about 5 minutes, he was no longer cramping and he was feeling better. I didn't recommend him continuing working out, obviously, because he was borderline getting to that point, because the next phase is cramping, overheating, heat exhaustion, heat stroke, death.
Game over.
Right. I mean, it's just, that's where the ball rolls if you don't fix it during, when you start seeing these things pop up.
Yeah.
I recommend a can of chicken noodle soup. Just put it in the bottom of your backpack and just save it there for one of those moments, because you'll be surprised, especially in the heat of summer, you may be using it either for yourself or for someone who's starting to talk weird. I mean, they can't even think. I mean, he was at that point where he wasn't able to tell me what was wrong.
Yeah. And that's another good thing too, folks, is like, it's probably actually a really good idea for you guys to look up symptoms of heat stroke. Like, so you'll get delirium, right? Loss of focus. Your cognitive ability goes way down. It's like being it'd be like someone that's half asleep. You woke up in mid dream and they're just like almost incoherently, like they make sense, but they don't. It's like they're off topic. They'll just stammer. So that's a big part. Motor function, finite motor function goes away. Like they'd have a real hard time putting a key in a lock type situation. So, because what we're seeing is when water falls to a point, what you're getting is brain impairment, right? Because your brain is like essentially fat and fascia. That's what your brain is made out of, which is almost, it's like watermelon. It's just mostly water.
Yeah.
And so when you're 4% depleted in your water, your brain is going to really have some suffering, like some brain fog, and probably have a bad headache, probably may not even notice it, be behind your eyes.
I mean, just think about all that's going on. I mean, probably because you're putting out, you're probably low on glycogen and blood sugar. You're probably low on electrolytes, and you're low on water. And it just goes downhill from there. And your ability to move and think and, keep your body temperature down are gone.
Yeah. Take 10% of the oil out of your engine and see how it drives. Right. So everything. So like we had a guy in my buds class that actually happened. It super dehydrated. He was a really good runner. He quit in the first week, but he was one of the better runners. And I remember him urinating like on day 3 after the run. It was almost coagulated.
That's a really good point.
Because, and so they had to stop and they sent him to the hospital and they're like, you're going into, if you don't you're going to go into renal failure. Yeah. Like literally his urine was like a gel.
Well, if you think about it, I mean, the heat casualty, with very, hard exercise on top of it, it just blends right into rhabdo. I mean, you're basically getting rhabdomyolysis.
Exactly.
And then from there,
there's a real risk of death with that.
Yeah.
When you combine heat stroke with rhabdo, if you don't go into some form of liver failure, you're lucky.
Yeah.
With those two combined, you're just, that's a risk. That when you hear of people dying of rhabdo, it's usually those two things. Yep. There's a heat casualty component to it that the brain just couldn't sort through. Because again, what happens is that the toxicity breaches the blood-brain barrier, and you go basically toxic. Your brain does. It's just you die, and I've only had one instance where I saw somebody get into rhabdo. They came in and out pretty quickly, and it was definitely heat involved. There's heat involved to it. So big guy, former wrestler, a lot of muscle mass, and that's a lot of guys you guys run into. A lot of muscular type guys that have real super lean, like runner type cross country, that they typically don't have the muscle mass to get rhabdo.
Right.
And that's not a knock on them. That's just their body type. It's just you and I are a much higher risk of rhabdo than a cross country athlete.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. Just because of our muscle mass.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but that's a good thing. Like there's a million things you guys can do, but here's the deal. I say my summary is get it. If you have to adjust your schedule to a morning run, do that, or evening run. You should do that if you can, right? Hydration is the key, and hydration is only as good as how you start, not how you end up hydrating. So start your hydration soon, early, and often. Okay. And then from there, I always look at it and go, maybe create some diversity of locations. If you've been historically running in wide open areas and spaces, even if it's just for monotony, but also if you can find a shaded place, go find some trails. If you guys live in some wooded areas, go find some nice trails. And then the last thing for me is that some people, because it's a hydration thing, like some people, and it's really hot, and if running, you keep finding yourself with cramping and dehydration, switch to rucking for a little while, because most people can drink during the ruck a lot easier than they can drink during their run. So sometimes there might be an adjustment phase just for your body to go, are we going to handle this heat? Is he going to give me the necessary nutrients to handle that? And then you do over the course of the week with rucking, you increase your hydration during activity, and then you take that into running. That would be my last piece of advice. But outside of that, it's up to you. It's up to you guys. Make a point to do this. Be purposeful in your design and stick to it. Be consistent, especially through this heat. It's the best way to manage it.
Yeah. You can decide when you enlist and show up at buds too. You can show up in the middle of summer and have to deal with this, or you can show up in the winter and have to deal with the cold. I mean, regardless, you're going to be there.
No escape.
Yeah, regardless, you're going to be there 6 months, and you're going to have a little bit of both, regardless of, depending on what phase you're in. I personally had a a winter dive phase, and that was colder than anything I'd have ever experienced in my life. It was awful.
Yeah, our third phase was winter. So we were at the island in the winter. So we dove through the fall, which wasn't bad in San Diego at all.
Sure.
So yeah, well, May, I got there in May. Hell Week was in June. So then July, August was first phase. August, September, the second phase was my birthday, and then October, November. Yeah, October, November was third phase.
Cold Island too is not easy either.
No, that was like getting in the island in November. Like it was definitely colder out there, but no, I didn't have to dive in the winter, which was nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, the thing is, climatize yourself to the elements. I think working out outside year round is beneficial. You get used to the cold, you get used to the heat, depending on where you live. And, you can start creating those habits of staying on top of dehydration and overheating and all that by actually experiencing it yourself. Because if you just work in the AC all the time, you won't have those habits of sipping water constantly throughout your workout.
Yep, agreed. Totally agree. Yeah. You can't develop those habits unless you're in the environment.
Yeah.
So plan to be in the environment. With that plan, have a plan for the environment.
Yeah. So I guess you could say this was our public safety announcement of Don't Be a Heat Casualty podcast.
Yeah, that's it. Drink your water, folks.
Yeah, there you go.
Eat your broccoli and drink your water.
Hey, be cool. Drink your water.
There you go. There's your public service announcement.
There you go. Hey, Jeff, once again, thanks for being on the Tactical Fitness Report. And Jeff's doing some great things down there in Virginia Beach. You guys should go check him out. You can see what he's doing on performancefirstus.com.
StuSmithFitness.com. That's where you need to go.
I'm still working out and writing about it, and you can see it on StuSmithFitness.com.
Yeah, I'm not writing. I'm just talking about it.
That's all right. That's all right. I'm a much better writer than I am speaker. So
I'm the opposite. Yeah, like I can't formulate a sentence when I have a pencil in my hand, but I seem to do okay when I'm in front of a crowd. So yeah, I'll just call it even.
There you go. All right. Till next time, my friend.
All right, Stu. Appreciate it.
Yep.